Cullen live in 1 minute. Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com.
All right, here we are. Chris Potter's already laughing.
Yeah, it won't last.
It won't last. We'll see if we can wipe that smile off his face. Hello, it's the 20th of February. It's a Wednesday. Potter's here, editor of Pittsburgh City Paper, which has a new edition out today, and maybe we'll get to what's in there.
Maybe. There's a first time for everything on the show, I guess.
Okay, well, so I, who don't engage in indulge in local news in the morning, did not know that Dr. Bruce Dixon, the head for a long, long time of the county health department, has died.
Yes,
and
early this morning, apparently.
Sort of surprising.
Yeah, it was. I don't think it was even in the papers. I think it was very...
No.
Yeah, it was this early this morning.
And he was suing the county, was he not?
Yeah, he was. So...
And how uncomfortable. Rich Fitzgerald, who canned him when he came into office, actually, Dixon was the first head to roll.
Right.
Put out a statement, which I guess you have to do.
Yeah. I mean, it's a classy statement.
It's a classy statement. Here is his statement. Understand that Dixon, there's no love lost here. He said, for over 20 years, Dr. Bruce Dixon was the ultimate public servant. That's why I fired him.
It didn't say that.
The ultimate public servant, dedicating his life to serving the needs of the residents of Allegheny County, which is why I fired him. The time and dedication that he committed to the department during his tenure was extensive, and so I fired him. While we differed in how the health department should move forward, the service he provided was admired and will not be forgotten soon. Okay.
See? Now you took the low road. Aren't you ashamed of yourself?
Amen. Well, still, that's an uncomfortable thing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
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 And Dr. Dixon seemed always, he was so lean and sort of in good shape for an older gentleman.
Yes.
Which is surprising.
Yeah.
I'm surprised. And the surprise hasn't sort of sunk in yet. Okay, so looking at the paper, every day, I'm loving this cop stuff. I mean, it is it's like Chinese torture.
Yep. Drop.
Every day there's something a little bit, it looks a little bit bigger. There are more questions. Look, here's one thing. As our I always want to call him Wally Lamb.
Michael Lamb.
Wally
city controller.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know who Wally Lamb is.
You don't?
No.
Wally Lamb is an author.
No.
We'll get to it. Don't worry.
Okay.
Has said that there are only 15 or 13 repositories that you can send that are proper places to stick a check made out to
City of Pittsburgh.
And the cops credit union is not one of them.
Right.
So he said any monies deposited there that were made out to the city of Pittsburgh, he says that, you can call it all kinds of things, but what it boils down to is theft. Okay. So we do know there's money deposited there by people in the police department. So, I mean, clearly what we have here is, what? A den of thieves?
Well, those would be your words, not mine, Lynn.
Well, look, the fact is we know we have crimes being committed where? In the police department, apparently by police department employees, whether cops or civilians, I don't know.
Accepting that definition of theft, I suppose you could say, yeah. I mean,
Oh, so you think...
No,
why is everybody so soft pedaling this?
I don't think people are soft pedaling. I think it's because it's a story that's developing. I mean, one of the things that came out, for example, I think just yesterday, is some of these accounts go back more than a decade. They go back to 2003, 2004, some of them. So, does that mean...
I believe one of them.
Yeah, but I'm saying, does that necessarily mean that there was graft and corruption in 2004? Because that obviously predates the Ravenstall administration. That was still under Tom Murphy and his police chief, Bob McNeely. So, you want to be careful about this stuff before you start tossing out allegations about da-da-da-da-da-da, especially if, you're working on stories about it. But yeah, it's very... It is a remarkable set of developments, and so what do we find out yesterday? That some of that money apparently went to rent condos for staff, for high-ranking officials in the city for G20, because apparently they felt their own homes were not safe. So
wait a minute.
What does that mean?
Wait a minute. See, I didn't know this. Okay.
Yeah, that's apparently this is one of the things.
Condos in the city for who?
For the mayor, I believe, for his director of public safety, I think for Harper himself during G20, because they were concerned that their own homes were not safe, that they were going to be targeted by protesters.
For God's sake!
Which would be remarkable.
What a bunch of self-important nonsense! What a
I'm not even sure.
Believing their own paranoid ravings.
I'm not even sure. I'm not even sure. People who lived here knew where the mayor was living at that point. There was sort of a veil of secrecy
that's true.
over that whole thing. So, and he's certainly kept it under wraps since then.
So the city bought them, rented some condos
for them to dwell in during the course of the G20, is what the mayor has said yesterday. So there you go.
I felt somewhat unsafe too, so I slept here. Right here on that floor, right over there in the corner.
We both did. I was upstairs
for a night.
Excuse me,
you were not sleeping in the same room.
No.
You were upstairs?
Yeah, I was upstairs.
I was over there.
Yeah, weren't we supposed to go out to dinner and then you blew me off for something over at the Warhol?
Yeah.
Yeah, you got a better invitation. Not the first time that's ever happened to me.
Yeah. You didn't show up at the Warhol? I think you did.
No,
you didn't? Okay, all right. Whatever. No. It was a bore.
I was too busy being here watching absolutely nothing happen.
Nothing. There was nothing. Man, those protesters, the only scary people during G20 were the cops.
Yeah. Speaking of which, did you see the ACLU has settled the last?
ACLU finally settled the last. And here's what you have to figure. The city, and it was obvious during G20, that they factor in the cost of these civil rights violations on perfectly innocent Americans that are simply exercising their First Amendment right of expression and petition, and they locked them up, they roughed them up in some cases, they this and that. They know what they're doing is illegal, but they figure, well, we'll pay for it.
It's a line item
later.
on a budget. And in fact, remember that they actually had paid for a $10 million insurance policy to cover the cost of anything that would have happened. And they ended up, I think they paid $1.5 million for that policy. And I think they ended up paying less than that in terms of payout. So essentially, the city has basically already, that bill was already sort of paid. Now, I think they have to pay a bit of a percentage of these settlements, but that's a blip on the radar. So essentially, the city has already paid for that money, and it paid back in 2009 when it got the policy. In fact, I mean, if you really look at it, I was talking to the ACLU about this, because they put out this statement, and it's, this reminds us all of the importance of, respecting the First Amendment freedoms of our citizens. And I just said, to me, if I'm a city official, the lesson it teaches me is the lesson here isn't so much to protect people's freedoms, but to make sure you have an insurance policy to cover your ass when you violate them.
Right.
And no. I mean, that's not how they wanted to see it. But I mean, the really lasting legacy, I think, of all of this is people may recall that there was an attempt by the Citizens Police Review Board to look into what police behavior and practices had been during the G20. And the city basically took a really hard line about the kinds of documents it was going to release because their insurer, the city was worried that if they basically turned over documents that could be used against the city in a subsequent legal action, that the insurer would say, okay, you voided your policy. And so the end result of this is it is now a little harder to get information for the review board to get information about police conduct than it was before, because of this insurance policy. So I would say the net result of this thing has been that we are now in somewhat, even as all these questions about police accountability have mounted, we're actually less able to kind of get answers to some of those questions. I've just over the years become very cynical, and one reason I guess I just look at this Ravenstall thing. Yeah. Yes, I just feel like, it just bring in the feds, just do the oversight, because apparently that's the only way anything gets done in this city when it comes to actually reforming the police department. Is every significant advance has just been because of federal oversight. When we had federal oversight of hiring, that's the only way we got diversity. That's
and now we don't.
And
anymore.
Now we don't. And now I can tell you this is going to be a bigger and bigger issue as the years go by. It's going to get to be a whiter and whiter police force, because so much of the diversity that we have did come from that period where they were under federal oversight, and a lot of those guys are getting older and getting to retire, and they're just not being replaced. So when we had police accountability measures, that was under federal oversight. All of that stuff is backsliding, and I'm just at a point where it's just like, how many chances do you give your local government to actually run something? How many chances do you give them to run it in the ground before you just say, you know what, somebody else needs to be sitting in the seat next to you? Is that okay? So has it ever been thus in the city? In my lifetime, yeah. I mean, it
doesn't matter who the mayor is. It doesn't. That there's just been a.
I mean, it sure feels like that. You can go back in my lifetime. This has been, what has it been there? I mean, there were 2 separate consent decrees, each of which multi-year things, and in both cases, the decree comes off and the department begins to go back
to where it was.
Yeah. I mean, the hiring, it took a little longer, I think, to revert to the mean. But I mean, you look now at what's going on, and it's just
this city is backward in this regard, especially in terms of diversity. I mean, it's city of, by, and for white men. Right.
I mean, one of the ironies of what's going on there now is that the chief of police is black.
Right.
Yeah. And I can tell you, and this is the thing that I think it was very interesting. Now, both of Mayor Ravenstall's challengers have called for Chief Harper to be suspended.
Right.
But it took a long time to get to that point. I was actually surprised at
how long it took. I kept thinking, okay, guys, if Ravenstall's sticking with him, don't you take the other side?
Well,
and anyway, I think it's a perfectly reasonable side to take.
Yeah, but nobody wants to
Step aside, sir.
Nobody wants to be the guy 3 months before an election who
shoves. Why? Because he's black?
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. I think they don't want to antagonize. This is an election where it's very possible that black voters could decide because of how the sort of geographical divisions work out, and nobody wants to run the risk of antagonizing those voters.
Oh, what a web we weave.
Indeed.
Yes. So Larry has sent a picture of you in action.
I just look like, that's me at Natalia Rudiak's campaign kickoff last night.
And was that just from last night? And you were, asking her tough questions?
No, I think she was telling me a story.
She was describing something because her hands are up and I look warily. You look like you're feigning interest. Did you agree with
I look like a person with 2 hours of sleep the night before, and that is what I was. So,
okay.
Yeah.
All right, yeah.
Anyway, so her campaign kicked off last night, and, it's very exciting.
Has she been a pretty good council person?
Lynn, that's for the voters to decide. I mean,
I don't know anything about any of them anymore. I've interviewed
the guy who's challenging her. There's a guy named John Lee, and it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Clearly, the thing that sort of makes Rudiak an interesting candidate is, in a lot of ways, she seems like she should be from the East End. She, went to CMU for grad school and did all that kind of stuff or whatever. But she's a native of Carrick. She went to Carrick High, and so she walks this sort of interesting line of sort of being, very rooted in the neighborhood, but then also, the kind of candidate who, progressive types, would get behind. And it'll be interesting. You could tell her challenger is already sort of saying, maybe she's not the best fit.
She's not one of us.
Right. That's very much it. She's really not the fit for this district that I am, So we'll see. It's a tough.
What, because she went to CMU?
You would never come out and say that. You would she's an
elitist and not one of us.
Yeah. That's where it's going.
Well, it sounds like she's got the right ethnic derivation.
Yes, Rudiak is a Racine name,
and she's blonde, and but she went to CMU for an graduate.
Well, and she had a fundraiser at Olive or Twist here downtown. Dun. That's a martini place,
she's not one of us.
So it's
Oh God.
That stuff works. I mean,
Shoot me. All right.
And yeah.
All right. So the Post-Gazette has on its front page that FBI is probing possible insider trading before the Heinz.
People were talking about this hours after the deal was announced.
I know. That's what I want to say. I was.
Yeah.
Well, why is I never saw anything in the Post-Gazette until today on it.
Yeah, I saw something somewhere about it, but
I'll tell you where you saw it. You saw it in the Wall Street Journal the very next day.
Yeah, that could be. Yeah.
But nothing locally. What the?
You sound like you're working yourself into a real media critique here. You want to just go with that?
Look. Oh, yes. Here, I've got a story.
Okay. All right.
Our media today.
Oh, God.
Chuck Hagel.
Yes.
Okay. So, wow, man, nothing more scary than a Republican spurned. I mean, Republicans spurned.
Right.
Whoa, this is one of their own.
Right.
Was. Anyway, boy, so that was pretty ugly. I don't know if you saw any of the, like the McCarthy-esque questioning by Ted Cruz of Texas. Got so ridiculous at one point that even McCain, who had been raking him over the coals himself, said, hey, cut it.
Right.
He's an honorable man, which is more than you guys are. He didn't go that far, but that's what he meant.
Right.
Yeah, anyway. So, there's a reporter for the Daily News.
The New York Daily News. Mm-hmm.
Daily News, Dan Friedman, who I guess heads their Washington bureau. And he wanted to, write about what was going on with Hagel and what all the opposition from the Republicans was about. And there'd been all these sort of veiled rumors and innuendo on the part of some of these Republicans that he had taken money from, foreign governments and like North Korea.
The Friends of Hamas. That was the best example, the made-up one, I think.
Okay, that's what I want to talk about.
Yeah, okay.
So this reporter, Friedman, calls up someone he knows on the Republican side, an aide on Capitol Hill, and says, so what do you know about, you guys have anything concrete on this, on these rumors about Hagel? And even, are you aware that apparently people are saying that he spoke to some groups that are like really out there? Like, so can you tell me, did he ever speak to, and he specifically asked him, so did he ever give a speech like, say, to the Junior League of Hezbollah? That's what he said.
The Daughters of the Islamic Revolution,
right. He said, so did he? Was he speaking at the Junior League of Hezbollah? And then he came up with, which is actually better than the Friend of Hamas. But those were the two he threw at him.
Okay.
And
so he was deliberately trying to goad these guys into saying crazy stuff. Okay. All right.
So then he doesn't hear from the guy. He emails him back the next day, and his email, he said, I followed up with an email as a reminder. Did he get $25K from Friends of Hamas? That was his follow-up. Still didn't hear back. Then he sees on Breitbart.com a headline.
He got $25K from Friends of Hamas.
White House spokesperson ducks question on Friends of Hamas. Okay, and it's picked up by The Nation. It's picked up
by...
The
Nation?
No, not The Nation. Yeah, excuse me. By National... I'm sorry. Excuse me. By National Review.
Right.
It's picked up by RedState.com. It's picked up by all, of course, where all the, the right-wingers get their news. And they all run with it.
Yeah.
Hagel spoke. And Friedman sees this and says, Jesus Christ.
So it began with him?
It began with him.
I didn't realize that.
He calls the guy he first talked to and said, hey, what gives here, buddy? He said, did you talk to some? He said, well, I might have mentioned to a few people that you had asked about whether or not he had spoken to Friends of Hamas.
So he used that he was just joking when he said, was it Friends of Hamas?
Yes, he said it was so over the top, so absurd, because he...
You wonder where they get this stuff. And now we know.
And Breitbart story read on Thursday, Senate sources told Breitbart News. This show's to go yet. Be very careful. Very careful. On Thursday, Senate sources told Breitbart News exclusively, that they have been informed.
Oh, my God.
One of the reasons that President Barack Obama's nominee for Secretary of Defense, Chuck Hagel, has not turned over requested documents on his sources of foreign funding is that one of the names listed is a group purportedly called Friends of Hamas.
Oh, my God. I had not heard this side of it. Wow.
And that guy named Ben Shapiro wrote that. And
oh, Lord.
Anyway, so when contacted, Ben Shapiro gets contacted by the guy who first started this by just his...
We have something in common.
I make things up, but I'm kidding. You make things up and publish them as truth in something as important as a nomination of the Secretary of Defense of the United States. And then he said...
so what did Shapiro say?
I mean, it's one of these cases, he says, where it's not like if you had bothered as a reporter to confirm what you heard exclusively.
Right.
You would find there was no such entity. So he finally gets to this guy at Breitbart.
Right.
And Shapiro said, yeah, well...
This is going to be good.
Friends of Hamas might not exist. But he said...
But still,
no. He said his story used this is a quote, very, very specific language to avoid flatly claiming that it did exist.
Right.
Right. And he went on to say, this is the jerk who ran with the story, the story as reported is correct. Whether the information I was given by the source is correct, I am not sure. Okay, now you said you're about to start on a rant about media. This is media today? This guy thinks he's a reporter?
Yeah, obviously Breitbart is partisan driven.
National Review is considered well,
I guess it depends on who's doing considering. I think it's that. That is fascinating because many's the time, and this is sometimes you'll get on the you'll do like like a crossfire type. I mean, you've been in these probably more often than I have. And the person on the other side of the table will say some story that's just like, well, you apparently haven't heard that the Department of Agriculture has been buying up M1 Abrams tanks.
That's right.
And you're just like, you're right, I haven't heard that. And then you feel like the idiot because you don't know it. And it's not true, and they got it off of some website like you've never heard of. And you always kind of wonder, where the hell does this stuff come from?
Well, in this case, it came from a real reporter who was flippantly suggesting that as a...
This is great. I'm so glad you brought this to my attention. This is really, because I had heard about Friends of Hamas and just sort of like everybody being baffled.
You know what? I wish rather than Friends of Hamas, they'd run with the Junior League.
But I mean, I think that just shows you that, and this is, this is funny, but there's a serious dynamic here.
It's very serious.
Which is these Republicans in office passing along this stuff to this partisan Republican media that then creates the context in which these Republican legislators take the actions that they do.
And are fulminating and screaming and yelling and holding up the confirmation with this just stuff made up of whole cloth.
Yeah.
And it's exactly what McCarthyism was about. Yeah. I have here in my hand a list of... And Cruz was just... His comments were so unbelievable. It was like that. Pure innuendo, saying nothing. If you go back and look at what he said, you see what he means by, I stand by, nothing I said in the story was incorrect. Because there's words put in like purportedly and little things that give him the wiggle room.
Right. And this is what sources are telling me, and because that's what a source told him.
But explain that the most obvious thing would be, if you're a reporter,
Friends of Hamas,
is to look up Friends of Hamas. Does it even exist?
Oh, boy. Yeah. Well, there you go.
There you go. Well, it's always fun to tell Potter something he didn't know. Okay, I'm taking a break, guys, and we will be back in about a minute.
Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com or call Lynn at 412-316-3381. Lynn Cullen Live will return in a moment.
Pittsburgh City Paper's annual money issue is available now. Pick up one today for a unique look at financial issues in the region. Plus, this week's City Paper includes our inaugural education pullout, Decisions for the Future. Pittsburgh City Paper, available at over 1,700 locations throughout Western Pennsylvania, and on the web at pghcitypaper.com, and on your smartphone at citypapermobile.com.
This is the sound of a flat-screen television hurled off a building. Now the new bike your kid wants. These are the things you could have, all cast into oblivion. Because when you throw away money on wasted electricity, you throw away everything you could have bought with it. Use Energy Star light bulbs and appliances, and you could save hundreds of dollars a year. Saving energy saves you money. Learn more at EnergySavers.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Energy and the Ad Council.
Now, it's back to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com.
It's still funny.
What? It's still funny. You're still laughing. God. Well, you have to figure something like that happened. I mean, be very wary. I mean, all of us. And don't think it doesn't happen on our end of the spectrum, too, where something is put out just because you want it to be true, right?
Right. Which is what... Yeah.
And then... this one links to that one, links to this one, and then you've got, I have here in my, and it doesn't check out.
Right. I would say I think the interesting thing is, you mentioned the McCarthy thing. I think there's an interesting difference there, which was McCarthy was able to sell his story to a broad cross-section of the American people. I don't think with this stuff, it's quite the same. I think it's more proof of this weird little echo chamber they live in, right? Because National Review and Breitbart and Red State, like that's just their little circle jerk of, whatever. And it riles up the people on that side, But I don't, it's just like the Benghazi story. I don't know if anybody's polled this, but I can't imagine that Americans are just...
It's still going on.
Yeah, it'll never stop because it's just... Because the problem for them is there haven't been enough real scandals from the Obama administration,
There have been
except ones that they can't take advantage of. I think the drone program and some of the stuff going on
is a
scandal, but they clearly are not, except for the ones who are so crazy that they actually stumble on the truth once in a while. Because there are a few out there, the crazy Alex Jones, for example, who does worry about drones and stuff like that because it's consistent with his whacked out worldview. But for the most part, they can't seize on that. So they pick these things that are just crazy. The Fast and Furious, the Benghazi thing, which, it's 4 people died, which is a tragedy, but, have some sense of context and perspective about it. You're talking about the future defense of the United States. You've got the guy who wants to be making those calls, and you're gonna hold it up over these questions about something that had nothing to do with him from
and
4
Republicans who supposedly care most about national security and the military, and when we are still at war, we don't have a Secretary of Defense.
Yeah.
And explain to me why, please, the sequester, which is now, 10 days away?
Yeah. Yes.
It's 10 days away.
Yeah, and next week, I think. Yeah.
It's less than 10 days away because February doesn't even have 30 days, and it's the 20th. Okay. It's a week away. A week and a day.
Week and a day.
And if this is of remember, they decided they would do this, something that would be so egregious, so noxious, a thing
that they could never do it.
That they would never let it happen.
And then they let it happen.
They're letting it happen. Yeah. What? Congress is not even in session.
Yeah, that's right. The House, at least, yeah.
They're gone.
Yeah.
The president's golfing with Tiger Woods. What the?
Yeah.
And Wall Street is booming.
Yeah.
Will somebody please tell me what's going on?
I think Wall Street is already baked in the notion that that something will happen at the 11th hour that'll...
That's what we always think.
And
we know how these guys operate.
Right
at the last minute, they come in, they create these crises, then they come in and somehow stall it and wait for another 2 months where there'll be another crisis, and then at some point, they're not going to.
Yeah. I mean, if you listen to Pat Toomey is perfectly content letting that sequester happen. He wants it to happen.
Okay, so for those of you who, like me, my head starts spinning. There was the fiscal cliff.
Right.
Somehow we averted that, did we not?
Yes, we did. Yeah.
Is the fiscal cliff not?
That's not a thing now. You need not worry your pretty little head. Our betters in Washington.
But now the sequester seems to me sort of like the fiscal cliff.
Right.
It's another fiscal cliff.
Yes, it would be a different set of it. Would be massive cuts in defense spending and social spending alike. That was the idea. Both parties supposedly, Republicans, the theory was that Republicans would hate the defense cuts and Democrats would hate
the domestic
cuts. But I think what we've seen is Republicans don't really give a damn anymore.
No.
Even about defense. That's what the Hagel thing was in some ways. I mean, it's like, we have a kid.
They literally just want to stop the government.
Right. We have a kid who now puts, at my house, our child puts himself into timeout. He thinks it's funny. So he'll go time out, and then he'll go sit in the timeout space and then start laughing. Like, how? And our question is, how the hell do we discipline this now? Because he's taken the tool away from us. It's the same with the Republicans. They've just basically said, yeah, we don't care. We don't care. We're perfectly willing to basically have the Department of freaking Defense not have somebody running the show over there. It doesn't matter to us. How do you reconcile, yourself?
Well, I was saying, I think the biggest threat, I was saying this yesterday, and I'll say it again, the biggest threat to this country right now is the Republican Party.
Yeah.
They are literally, if a terrorist was doing what they're doing to us, absolutely preventing our government from functioning.
Right. And then using government dysfunction as the reason for why they should be in, right? That's what happens, because they like to say government doesn't create jobs, but everybody for example, Johnstown, Pennsylvania, and a lot of other places know that their jobs do depend on defense spending, especially. So it'll be very interesting. And of course, what'll happen is, that'll put a dent into gross domestic product and all these other things. There'll be layoffs. The economy will struggle along, and then the Republicans will say, "See, that just proves you can't trust Democrats and their big spending ways."
That's right.
I mean, you have to admire.
But don't you think
the insane
more
genius
and more people are now catching on to this?
I think so. I think
and the people are saying, hey, and they're seeing who's responsible here.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, so do the Republicans have a death wish? At least half of them or something. What is? And we hear about the great civil war among the Republicans, and there is real trouble there.
I think the problem is for years and years and years, they have said government's the problem, government's the problem, government's the problem. And for a lot of them, the sort of old operators, they didn't really mean it. It was a talking point. And unfortunately, if you say that stuff for 20, 30 years,
the base believes
people start to kind of think you might actually be sincere. And so they take you seriously. And then you start electing people who actually mean it, like Pat Toomey or like Keith Rothfuss. And then everybody's surprised. Where did these conservative guys came from? Well, I mean, they told you what they were going to do. The problem is you have been trained to expect that they don't really mean what they say.
These guys do mean what they say.
They absolutely do.
You spawned an entire generation of people who swallowed what you were saying in a cynical manner.
Right. And now you've got, of course, again, the feedback loop of Fox News and Red State and Breitbart all talking about it. It is remarkable. So we'll see. It'll be interesting. I could tell there's a protest happening this morning to complain about sequester cuts. I'll be doing a conference call later this afternoon. So a lot of people are going to be talking about sequestration in the next few days. I think the very word sequester just has this.
I think it's meaningless. I don't know what it means.
Yeah,
I think a sequester. What is what do you?
It means like culling things off.
Culling and putting aside. Yeah. I mean, I will. Time out is like sequestering your son.
Yes.
We'll sequester you, buddy. Yeah. Right.
Sequester.
So I don't even understand how that was the term for this horrible. Too bad they didn't call it something like the fiscal cliff. Too bad they didn't call it like the cyanide pill.
Right.
Because,
there you go,
more
the poison pill or something.
Would know.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so we're the whole nation, and understand that when we swallow this pill, it's not these SOBs who have created the problem that are going to suffer. Hell no.
Right.
It's
the people in Johnstown.
Regular people that are going to be
programs.
shown the door.
Yep.
And you think, how's that going to help our economy, guys? Mark my words, and this is not hyperbole. The gravest danger to this country are the Republicans, the party itself, and their base.
Yep.
The greatest threat to this nation. For one thing, because they have so divided us. And, we can pull out the quotes, a house divided against itself cannot stand. And government is supposed to be compromised. That's how the whole system was set up by those brilliant founding fathers that the right wing likes to trot out and then misinterpret. The fact is if you don't compromise, you don't have a government.
Right. Because as we've seen, I mean, with the Senate and the filibuster. These are things, there are winner-take-all political models in other countries, but typically they are able to call elections very quickly. They don't have the same kinds of
If a government comes
rules.
to a standstill like this in a parliamentary system, you call
an election.
And then if an election were held today, you'd knock a lot of these SOBs out.
Yeah, well, assuming you had the right districts.
Well, you'd get the intention of some of them, I would think. So, So 13 Republican governors have now refused to take part in the Affordable Care Act's provision.
Including ours,
Including our governor, Corbett, which mandated an expansion of Medicaid to cover the lowest income, the most needy people. And to sweeten the pot, the feds were going to essentially give them the money to do it.
Right. Up front, they would pay 100%, and then as the years went down. But even so,
you could budget it in, and of course, when you think, I'm sorry.
And again, here's the cynical Machiavellian genius of it. Because so many of these states have decided not. The funny thing is, on the surface, you look at it and you say, okay, well, the states are choosing not to do it. What does that mean? It means the feds are going to come in and set up the system anyway.
That's right.
So here's the party of states' rights, the Republicans, forfeiting their rights and handing this over to the federal government. The problem with that is that stupidly enough, I think the one consistent mistake the Obama administration has always made is underestimating Republican intransigence. So the Obama administration wasn't necessarily prepared for all these states to opt out and for the feds to have to do it alone. So that's going to potentially delay the rollout of this stuff. And then the Republicans will turn around and use that delay as proof of, see, you can't possibly do this on your own, You can't trust the government to get it right. They'll screw it up, blah, 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 blah. It's this self-fulfilling, they fulfill their own prophecies.
Mind-boggling.
Yeah, but again, within its viewed from a certain perspective, it has a sort of sinister genius to it, you'd have to say. The irony is, of course, is that for every Corbett's explanation for why he didn't want to do this is because it would cost a few $billion over the course of years for the state. And that is true. There would be a cost to the state. But what he's done is he's essentially forfeited Pennsylvania's claim on billions of dollars in the meantime that would have come from the federal government. So whereas we will be paying for, as federal taxpayers, we will be paying for the systems that get set up in other states. So he's essentially cheated us out of our own share.
Way to go, Corbett! Man. And that brings me to... So he's handing $50 million back to these Brits who were supposedly going to take over the running of the lottery.
Right.
See that?
Yeah.
Okay. And that's because his attorney general...
Not his attorney general.
Well,
yeah.
It is his attorney general, whether he likes it or not. Kathleen Kane has said this is friggin' unconstitutional.
Right.
My understanding is that so much of his budget is predicated on this essential privatization of the lottery. It's also predicated on the privatization of state stores. Mm-hmm. And yet, neither of these things is happening. So what does that tell you about Corbett's budget? It falls apart. There's no funding in it.
And there's also pension reform, which I think is probably even a bigger deal there. And that also is an uphill climb.
Well, how do you base a budget on a house of cards, on wishes, hopes, and dreams?
Well,
what?
The funny thing about it is Ed Rendell used to do this. Ed Rendell did this stuff. He would put budgets together and with expectations of expansion of gambling, the revenue he thought was going to come from that. And all the Republicans were just always up in arms about it. How can you possibly hold this budget hostage to your own policy initiatives, which should be discussed separately and da-da-da-da-da-da. And then along comes Tom Corbett, and he's going to be the guy who's not going to play those shenanigans. His budgets will come in on time. They will be balanced with real revenue, da-da-da-da-da-da.
Bullshit.
Now here we are, and he's doing exactly the same kind of stuff that Rendell used to do and was denounced for doing. So on the one hand, you can't, as Democrats can only get so worked up because their boy used to do that sort of stuff. But on the other hand, yes, I mean it is entirely hypocritical for Republicans now to be employing these tactics that they denounced when it was somebody else in the governor's mansion. Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, the thing, we've talked about this before. I mean, the problem is, Corbett comes out and he says, look, I've got more money for basic education. I've got, more money for this, more money for that.
Guess what? No, we don't.
But his people were very clear about saying, but all of this depends on getting our way on pension reform. And all of this depends on getting our way on some of these other initiatives.
Well, it's friggin' pie in the sky. This is not a rational way of budgeting. Go ahead, caller. Caller, go ahead.
Hey, Lynn, it's Ed from Trafford.
Hi, Ed.
Hey, I think one of the problems that the Republicans have is that they have become what they've railed against, and They don't realize it.
Explain.
Well, they complain about big government and government doing this and now they're the government.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't register with them that they have become what they were screaming about, and they don't know how to deal with it.
Well, I've never understood how if you're against government, you choose to make a career of it. But, for all of them, I'm confused about that. But then the only reason could be that you infiltrate this huge apparatus known as government, and you throw wrenches in the works. I mean, I do think that's what they're doing.
See, I disagree with you though, Ed, because I think the dynamic now is that, and Lynn and I were talking about this a few minutes ago. I actually think some of the ones in there now do believe in that stuff. They are aware of their situation, and it is not changing their behavior. Government was able to muddle along because so many Republicans were hypocrites in exactly the way you're describing. The problem now is that they've actually elected people like Keith Rothfuss or whatever who doesn't blanch when it comes time to vote against
helping people who are homeless
Americans
because of a Sandy hurricane.
Like
right.
it's not a problem for him, so he does that, and now everybody's screaming. But it's like, hey, he's. I'll say this for those guys. At least he's honest. I mean, he said he was going to do this stuff, and he's doing it, and it's terrible, which is why people shouldn't have voted for him. But go ahead.
The thing is that we have so many people in there who are never wrong.
Right.
Oh.
They're just.
Isn't that amazing?
I'm not wrong. You know.
No.
The sun came up. No, it didn't. And that's and they won't back down.
No,
they won't. They'll fly in the face of all the information, all the facts and stuff. Facts are irrelevant because this is what I believe, and I'm never wrong.
Right.
Right. Two good adjectives for them that I've used throughout the last 10 years, at least, shameless and intransigent.
Right.
I mean, you're right, they stick to their guns, they won't move, it doesn't matter, let the place come crashing down around their ears, and they will take credit.
Yeah. You don't say that the sun didn't come up, you just say, Solyndra! This is just more of your solar agenda. That's what you say.
I used to work for an agency that dealt with people at, I'll tell you, the welfare department.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And a couple of things, like you'd go out and you say, well, we have evidence that you're working. No, I never worked. Well, we have a statement from your employer. Well, he's wrong. Well, here's copies of your pay stubs. Well, that's not me. Well, we have, we've talked to, your neighbors and fellow employees. Oh, no, that's not me. They're just, they won't say.
They won't own up.
No, they just keep saying no.
Right.
And after a while you say, well, maybe these other people are lying. And I think that's the intransigence. You really hit it. They just keep pounding away at it, and people get tired of it, and
they give up. They take it in and say, all right. If this is the way you say it is, all right.
Yeah. This is the Republicans are the crazy person on the bus theory.
Yeah.
Which is that the crazy person on the bus yells and basically always gets to sit by himself because nobody wants to be next to the crazy person on the bus, but he gets to sit by himself, so it works for him.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for your show.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for the call. I appreciate it. And we'll take a quick break. And
like a well-oiled machine.
Oh, yeah. Return momentarily.
Stick around for more with Lynn Cullen live after this.
Go to burgbargains.com for great deals on meals from your favorite local restaurants, museums, and shows. This week only, get discounts up to 20% on gift cards to P.F. Chang's. Supplies are limited. Burgbargains.com, Pittsburgh's best bargains. Burgbargains.com.
Here at the GED Pep Talk Center, we've got a pep talk that can motivate you.
Sometimes things don't always turn out the way you want them to.
You can improve your future. Now get your game face on and take the first step towards a better life. Hurry up. Don't make me repeat myself.
Whatever level of motivation you need, we've got a pep talk for you. Call 1-877-38-YOUR-GED or visit yourged.org for your pep talk and for free classes in your area. GED is a registered trademark of the American Council on Education. Brought to you by Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Have a question or an opinion? Call Lynn Cullen at 412-316-3381 or email lynn at pghcitypaper.com. Now, more with Lynn Cullen live.
Not a lot of action on the email front today, Potter.
Yeah.
Just that picture of you.
Well, that's probably what happened is the photo of my head sucked up all your bandwidth.
That
you probably
might have
maxed out. You probably maxed out your memory.
Well, we maybe have another gentleman caller here. Let's see.
Such a good
Hello.
caller.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey, you got to look at the big picture here. This is what this Pepe Le Pew, the president of the NRA, whatever the hell his name is.
I like a Pepe Le Pew.
Whatever his name is, they want to piss everybody off. They'll have their guns to protect each other.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about. It's the grand plan of the Republican Party. They're down on the poor and the working poor and the disabled, screw everybody up, then we'll be fighting among each other.
I like
That's
it.
what's
Stir
gonna
'em
happen.
up.
I do think.
Yeah.
Well,
Hey, we'll see ya.
Bye. Well, that's right.
We got to give that guy his own show. Be short, but
Yeah, short and to the point. That's right. Enough of all these blowhards.
like a Paul Harvey thing.
Yeah, that's
3
right.
minutes out.
I love it.
That's it though. That is it. Fear and aggression. That's the message. and you see, I just saw research that just said that people who identify themselves as conservatives also have more fearful reactions to
it's not
situations.
that. So if you are a person who,
you're more likely to be conservative.
To see danger,
Right.
perceive danger,
Right.
around you, the odds are you're going to be a Republican.
Right.
What a way to live.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Scaredy cats. Afraid of your own shadow, and you end up imprisoning yourself and everybody else, and good God Almighty. All right. Columbia University.
Okay. Yes.
Columbia University.
Yes. In New York.
Excellent school.
So I'm told.
Very pricey. Imagine you sent your kid there, and the kid is taking quantum mechanics.
Okay.
All right.
I'm trying to imagine that.
All right. Well, the kid taking quantum mechanics at Columbia could well end up in the lecture of Professor Emlyn Hughes. And somebody actually videotaped a recent lecture Professor Hughes gave.
Uh-oh.
And this is what you see if you look at that. It's been online. It starts with the professor with his back to the students and music playing, removes his clothing. Yes?
Uh-huh.
And an image of a skull is projected on a screen.
Right.
Little while later, 2 stuffed animals are placed on stools.
By whom?
Maybe the professor. It's unclear here.
It's that passive voice construction.
Then, a person dressed all in black
Yes.
takes out a sword.
Yes.
And stabs the stuffed animals.
Yes.
And in the background, the video now, the skull is gone, but instead you see the World Trade Center coming down. So
wow.
Let's review. You have a naked professor, stuffed animals on stools, black-clad samurai sword carrying, stabbing them, skulls, and World Trade Center. And again, yes, you did sign up for a lecture on quantum mechanics. Apparently, during the course of this video, which has been on the internet, you hear a female voice saying, "What's going on?"
But you know what?
What?
Those students will remember that class for the rest of their lives. You can't tell me there wasn't at least a few kids in that room who were not glad they weren't talking about quantum mechanics that day. Was that is that every class, or was that?
No, it's just the one, and it ended when the professor turned, and I don't know if he put his clothes back on or not, and he is quoted as saying this: "In order to learn quantum mechanics, you have to strip to your raw. Erase all the garbage from your brain and start over again."
Yeah.
I still don't get what that has to do with stabbing stuffed animals.
It's just, the
I
play
don't
of
get it.
bosons and of...
I don't know. Okay. We have a call. Hello.
Hey, Lynn. Hey, Chris.
Hi.
Hey.
Good Wednesday morning to you. Still morning, not afternoon yet. Oh, and since last week, or I guess last time I called, I paid Lynn a compliment on her hair, just in an attempt to be equitable and fair. I will say that
Chris's pate has a resplendent shine today.
Thank you. I polished it just this morning. So,
actually, you should see the video after I paid Lynn that compliment on her hair.
Why? What happened?
She ran her fingers through her hair a couple times. She's doing like a little shoulder pump.
Oh yeah, people don't realize what a glamour queen Lynn is.
Glory. have either referencing the last caller? Have either of you actually read Wayne whatever's
the Daily Caller essay?
His little treatise on why Americans need more and more and more guns?
Good God!
Yeah. Yep.
Woo!
Yeah. Somebody's been reading his dystopian science fiction.
Wow.
That's exactly the term I was going to use. He describes current day America as a dystopian wasteland.
Yeah.
Where there are southwestern cities such as Phoenix have just been commandeered, utterly taken over by Mexican drug cartels.
Okay,
citizens are randomly kidnapped off the streets and held for ransom.
Right.
Murder in the wake of
Sandy.
Hurricane Sandy. There was just massive looting. Of minorities, the black and brown skinned people, they invaded the suburbs and were murdering and raping white New Yorkers at will.
Dogs and cats sleeping together, utter pandemonium.
Nightmarish landscape he described.
Yeah. One statement of absolute fantasy after another, spoken as truth, and you realize, we've been saying for years, when we fell down the rabbit hole, are these people insane? They're living in another way. Good God, this is their vision. And talk about fear.
Yes.
Be afraid, be very afraid, run out, there's no bullets in the country anymore, apparently. They've been brought up.
Or have they? Perhaps this is already the government's secret plan.
Oh, my God.
Maybe they've been taking the bullets off the shelves to create
so do you think
scarcity.
He's really insane? So is it that's purely cynical what he wrote?
Or does he actually mean
really believe it? Because if he really believes it, he's insane.
Yeah, I sometimes think some of these people start out just being coldly cynical.
Yeah.
And then they fall for their own...
deluding themselves into insanity.
Right.
Yeah, it's a good question. All I could say, I've recommended this before, but folks who haven't seen Bowling for Columbine, Michael Moore's film about, it's probably the most pro-gun, anti-gun movie ever made, because at the end of the day, what he concludes is the problem here isn't the number of firearms; it's the amount of fear-mongering in this society.
That's right.
I think you see it. I'm struck too, and this is something else, that people should pay attention. There's all this talk about the video games and the violence of video games, and I can see where it's something to worry about. But I think if you look at, what's the sort of one of the common factors in a lot of these shootings is that the person who did the shooting was a big fan of right-wing radio. The Richard Poplawski, the guy who shot up the cops here in Pittsburgh a few years ago, was a big fan of Glenn Beck. That guy down in Alabama who had that autistic kid in his bomb shelter or whatever,
right.
he was a big anti-government conspiracy theorist. Apparently the mother.
So you tell these people this long enough and they'll start acting.
They start believing it.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that stuff drives them crazy. I'm not saying that listening to Fox makes you a crazed gunman, but I would say that something about that message plays into a certain, people who already have a certain kind of mindset, and it gives them a focus for their derangement, and it becomes the thing that makes sense of the world to them, and then they go out and then they act as they do.
That's right.
I also have one other question for fans, ardent fans and listeners of right-wing radio.
Who are big fans of this show too? Yeah,
you're not preaching.
I know, but just rhetorically, if gold is so good and so desirable, why is Goldline and the other purveyors willing to trade gold for cash? If it's more valuable than cash, why do they want cash for it?
Yeah, you should just hold on.
Yeah.
Right. That's a good point, actually. Never thought about that.
Good point. We'll pass it on to
all of our right-wing friends.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Take care, man. Thanks for the call.
Appreciate it. Bye. All right. So just back to our naked professor.
Yeah.
So all hell broke loose.
As one would expect.
Yeah, and what do you think the university statement would be? Columbia, he's tenured, whatever.
Yeah. The principles of academic freedom sometimes require us
Pretty good. You almost got the first sentence.
Okay. Yeah.
Universities are committed to maintaining a climate of academic freedom. Yeah, that's it.
Yep.
In which the faculty are given the widest possible latitude in their teaching and scholarship.
Nevertheless.
However, you got it right. The freedoms traditionally accorded the faculty carry corresponding
responsibility.
Thank you very much. Responsibility. While one, of course, must exercise caution in judging excerpts from a lecture. Yeah, but he's standing there naked, stabbing stuffed animals, and it's quantum mechanics. Excuse me. While one must exercise caution in judging excerpts from a lecture from an entire course outside of their full context, the appropriate academic administrators are currently reviewing the facts of this particular presentation.
Who taped this? Was it one of the students?
One of the students must have.
With using their iPhones and whatnot.
Sure.
So does this guy have a reputation for being?
No, that's all I got. This is
eccentric. Okay,
that's all I got. And
it's possible that he's an excellent professor. The other, 20 classes or whatever of.
Yeah. And I don't.
Maybe he just likes to, I mean, that almost sounded like a Led Zeppelin video from the song.
Yeah, well, maybe he is a good professor, but I don't know. Trying a little too hard there, I think.
Yeah, I would say.
Yeah.
Oh, dear.
Oh, dear. So they're going to be drilling at the airport.
Yep.
And I don't know what else to tell you. What happened with Pistorius, do you think? You don't follow any of that stuff.
No, I mean, how do you not follow it? That's one of the stories that's everywhere.
What the hell?
Yeah, I like this story. I thought there was a burglar in my bathroom.
There's a burglar in my bathroom.
So I shot it, and then, yeah.
What the hell?
Can I tell you the really tasteless response?
Oh, I've heard it a million times.
Okay, never
he
mind.
doesn't have a leg to stand up.
Yeah, it's kind of...
Someone told me that yesterday and said, and she said, and I didn't make that up. I said, no.
You just passed it along.
But the fact is that probably 20,000 people around the globe had the same thought.
It's funny.
We can't help it.
I know.
It's funny. Okay, well, there you have it. I mean, I think we're done.
I know I am.
You are?
Yeah.
Done?
Yes.
Finished? All righty. We didn't get to your...
See, I told you.
Paper,
That's all right.
see?
People can just pick it up and see for themselves.
All right. Pick it up. It's the money issue.
Oh, they're all money issues, baby. Sokolowski tomorrow?
Sokolowski tomorrow.
I'll be listening.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Have a great one. Bye.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper, Steel City Media, and its advertisers.